All right, Matt. Like Harold Clarence Howard said at UFC 4, we got a saying up here in Canada, if you're coming on, come on. And listen, with Fight Night picks, we're changing things up a little bit this week because we don't have fights to pick. I mean, we got Cage Warriors 113, but we don't want to just go head first into picks like that. That wouldn't be fair to you at home, the viewer. But we're starting up something new called Fight Night Picks, Parry and Counter. And I think it's going to be really interesting. We threw it out there on Instagram and YouTube, and we got a lot of different responses from you, the fans. Keep those questions coming. It's going to keep us afloat for a bit, but we really do appreciate it. One of the questions out there from MMA Picks is, who is the best fighter to never win a belt? And I'm going to take that as in MMA, your MMA picks. We're Fight Night Picks. That's an awesome question. Actually, we brought up through some of these videos that we've done in Parry and Counter a couple of different names.
Benavidez.
Joseph Benavidez has to be one of them.
I feel bad for him at this point. Like, Chael Sonnen had a video the other day, not to cut you off, but there was this guy who lived nearby who was a really good wrestler, but it just so happened that his neighbor became the Olympic champion, so he never actually won anything in his whole life. He never won districts in middle school.
Chael Sonnen?
No, it wasn't. But it was, he never won districts in middle school, high school. It didn't matter what he did, because he always had an Olympic champion as his neighbor, and that's very much the story of Joseph Benavidez. He had Dominic Cruz and Demetrius Johnson ahead of him, and those are the only two divisions he could compete in. Those are two of not only the greatest of their divisions, those are the two greatest of all time, and he was always stuck behind them. And I just kind of feel bad for Benavidez, because he tried to get that title a few weeks ago, and just the way that he lost to, if he had lost by decision, it was a close fight, and he got to just kind of go that way, it would have been okay. Like, I would have felt fine if he had retired after that, if he had a hard-fought decision, and he did end up losing. But just the way that he got knocked out, with the opponent missing weight, and there's all this controversy, you just feel really bad for him in the first place. But he is immediately who I think of when we talk about fighters who are the best to ever win a title.
There's a couple different ones that pop up in my mind, and you talk about performance bonuses and fight of the night. The number one guy has to be Cowboy Cerrone. Donald Cerrone has to be right up there. I mean, he's had so many big fights. He's fought for titles before. You look at the fight that he had against RDA, definitely didn't go his way. He keeps building himself up, and then it just happens that, you know, it just doesn't happen, really.
And of course, Yoel Romero, but the problem is he's had so many title fights, and he's had the chance, he should have been champion. When he beat Luke Rockhold, he just missed weight, so it's really on him, but again, I feel like we do need to mention him in the discussion. Anthony Rumble Johnson's another guy who, he fought in 3 different divisions, kind of only 2, but his light heavyweight run was unlike anything. When Rumble Johnson fought...
Especially coming back to the UFC.
Exactly. So I'm a big basketball fan, and there's nothing more exciting than when your friend texts you and they say, like, Stephen Curry's getting hot, switch the game over, because you're going to see something you've never seen before. And when Rumble Johnson fights, you feel like, oh, I'm about to see something that's... I'm either going to see Rumble get tired and get choked out, or I'm going to see him send a man into the stratosphere. Those are really your only 2 options. So I feel like he has to be another guy who gets his due. Alexander Gustafsson, again, from that same division. The fact that he fought to a split decision with Daniel Cormier in a fight that I thought he won, and then that crazy, probably one of the greatest fights ever with John Jones, those are his only 2 title fights. And same thing with him. He can't beat the 2 greatest of all time, but he could beat pretty much everyone else. So you have to mention him. There's other guys too, even going outside the UFC. Mirko Cro Cop was never a heavyweight champion. He was never Pride heavyweight champion. He was never UFC heavyweight champion.
Rizin,
and you can count that, but he had won the Grand Prix, which gave him the title. When you look at who he fought, he beat guys like King Mo, who was good, but King Mo's very undersized, especially when you're talking about Mirko Cro Cop. I know he was at an advanced age, but I don't really think we can count those.
Yeah, he beat Yuri Prohacshin that too.
He also didn't have to pass a drug test, and I don't know if you saw Mirko Cro Cop in that tournament, but I don't really think we can count that. It's a really fun discussion, though, every time you bring it up, because there's guys from every division. I mean, John Dodson, we brought him up before. If you just watch MMA now, if you've only been watching MMA since, Conor McGregor's been big, and it's nothing against you, I'm not calling you casual or anything, just a lot of people came on then. There was about a 3-year stretch, though, where there was a guy who weighed 125 pounds, had hands like lightning and big power, and his name was John Dodson. But again, he just couldn't get over the hump of Demetrius Johnson. He had 2 really good fights with him, but it didn't go his way either time. And again, we can keep on going. Francis Ngannou, if he never wins the title, something's going to be terribly wrong in this world. Because... just A, his style. B, he lost to Stipe in that crazy fight. I know you were there live, where even on TV, it felt like for those first 10 minutes that Stipe was just trying to survive, not even win the fight. When you look at how he defended and tried to move out of the way of shots, it wasn't like he was ducking and weaving. He was in a defensive basketball stance, shuffling back and forth, getting out of the way. So Francis Ngannou has to be mentioned in that. Chael Sonnen, I know it's a weird one.
He's won every title.
I know, and he's never lost. But Chael Sonnen, just to have the mouth that he had, and I know that got him a lot of the opportunities, and maybe he wasn't supposed to be fighting John Jones's, but Anderson Silva was 2 minutes away from losing his title. And not only losing his title, really losing the title.
Less than 2 minutes.
Yeah, but losing the title of being called the greatest ever, really. Because you can't have a guy just talk bad about your country, your family, you, constantly for months and months and months, and then get dominated by him completely. So I feel like Chael has to be mentioned. Any other names that I'm not thinking of?
I mean, there's a lot of different ones. And you bring up Chael Sonnen and the fact that it's kind of the Yoel Romero, but it's not his fault when he fought Paulo Filho. The fact that he should have won a title there, but it just didn't happen, and it was Paulo Filho's fault. But there's all sorts of names. But again, the biggest one to me is probably one of the most well-known, and a guy who every time out there, it's an exciting fight, it's a bonus, whatever. For me, the number one is Cowboy Cerrone.
Here's the thing. Do we count interim titles?
No.
If not, Tony Ferguson then. Yeah. Tony Ferguson, if he doesn't beat Khabib, I'm going to say this right now. If he doesn't beat Khabib, he's the greatest pound-for-pound fighter to never win a title. And it's not even a question. Because if you look at Yoel, there are holes in his game. He gets tired, of course. He isn't a very high-volume striker. Like, there's some things he doesn't do well. And I'm just talking about skill sets, not the actual athlete themselves. Tony Ferguson doesn't really have a hole in his game. And the fact that you could have a guy just as good as he is possibly never win a title throughout his life, because again, he's getting a little up there in age. He's 36 or 7, I believe. He's had quite a few injuries. If he never does get a title, he's by far the most skilled athlete to never win a UFC title.
I don't know. I mean, let us know. Let us know in the comments. Who are some of the names that you're thinking of? Maybe there's some that we're missing. I'm sure there are some names. I mean, there's plenty of people that went without winning titles, but were still big stars. And even when the big moment came, it just didn't happen for them. So let us know what you're thinking. But Fight Night Picks, Parry Counter, we're going to leave it, relatively wide open. Keep hitting us up with the questions.
Last pick, Demian Maia. He deserves a title, just for what he's done for the sport. He kind of showed that you can still be a one-trick pony even if you're 43, and I know he just lost and it was a bit of a bad loss, but when you just look at what he's done throughout his career, basically not striking for the majority of it, everyone knows what Maia's going to do, but he's so good at that one thing, he's still able to do it, and I know he lost to Silva and Tyron Woodley, but just when you talk about greatest fighters to never get a title, I do feel like Maia deserves to be in that conversation, to a certain degree at least.
Keep the comments flowing, and Matt's probably going to come up with 5 or 6 when we're done. But yeah, I mean, really looking forward to it. Parry and Counter, the new segment of the show. Make sure you check out all the different videos in the playlist. Keep sending us questions at Craig Allen FNP, at Matt Allen FNP, at Fight Night Picks on Instagram, on Twitter, and as well over on YouTube here. You can find us as well. And keep them coming, because we want to keep busy.
We need something to do.
We want to keep the lights on. And like we said, Matt, Fight Night Picks as always, let's get into it.